My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This is the Long Island Report on 107.1 WLIR. Using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my esteemed colleague and good friend, Jesse Garcia. Jesse is the vice chair of the state Republican Party, as well as the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. Well, Jesse, another week, everything changes, everything stays the same. Except last night, we had a State of the Union speech from President Biden. Now, let me give you my thoughts on it. This is a man who took the oath of office, was inaugurated, promised to bring the country together, to unify, to be different than Trump, who he characterizes as a divisive personality and a divisive president. And all we've seen for the last couple of years is the Democratic Party with the far left pushing their ideological agendas. And you have a speech last night which not only was not unifying, but was welcome aboard, join with me, just do what I want. That was the essence of his speech. He denied reality. It was one reality denial after another. Inflation is great. The border is secure. Fentanyl, they're dealing with. No problem raising taxes. You need a nationwide law protecting abortion because the Supreme Court denied abortion rights. More gun control. I just listened to the speech and I said, this gentleman, unfortunately, is living in an alternative universe. He's not living in the everyday world that those of us who try to be objective look at and say, we have one problem after another that's only worsened in the 2+ years that he's president of the United States, that he's not up to this job, and the country is being exposed on many different levels, externally and internally, because of his approach and his lack of leadership and his weakness. What say you?
I completely agree with you. This was a divisive speech. It was a partisan speech, hyper-partisan, in fact. And I just want to go back. Here, isn't it amazing that everyone refers to Donald Trump as a divider and a divisive individual and a divisive leader? Yet in his State of the Union addresses and his report to Congress, he had more unifying, forward-looking approaches in his speeches than President Biden has in his last couple of years. If you look at it, it's Democrats that seem to use the State of the Union address for the purposes of advancing divisiveness or scolding other levels of government. We all remember when Obama scolded the Supreme Court in the State of the Union because he did not agree with their decision. If you don't agree with me, you must be wrong. We have to change the things. That's the way the Democrats do it. While Republicans, we speak about solutions to problems and where we have a situation where we want to unify the country. And listen, as the State of the Union was being played out, I'm a little bit older. I remember Gerald Ford as a young guy, as a young man. And, we on our Suffolk County GOP social media pages on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, we play a little game. We had a State of the Union trivia fact that President Ford had the guts to say in the State of the Union address 48 years ago. He had the guts to say the truth. If Biden was honest, he would have said the same thing tonight. And the same issues confront us today as they did 48 years ago. We have spiraling inflation. We have record distrust in Washington, D.C., and we have a looming recession. And our country and American exceptionalism is at an all-time low. The direction, are we moving in the right direction, is at an all-time low. Those same things that were in place 48 years ago are in place today. And the president used a State of the Union address to chide Republicans, to accuse that Republicans, which is untrue, of going after Social Security, going after Medicare, because we want to rein in spending here because we are in a default situation. Our deficit is out of control. We need to do something about it. And contributing factors to that are Obamacare and also this crazy Inflation Reduction Act that has done nothing to reduce inflation at any true recourse here. So I think that it was an abomination of a speech. You'll have some pollsters that say it's got an approval rating that's plus. You have others that say it's that Republicans will see it and other people will find it. It was less than stellar. But the fact of the matter is it did not move the needle one bit. What it did keep doing was advancing divisiveness amongst our country. It did not say, join us in a cooperation to work together, even though that's the headline he was going for.
And the media is reporting it as a great speech, which
Exactly.
really, the enablers in the various institutions for Obama and for Biden and for Harris is just mind-blowing. Time after time after time, they tell you what they want you to believe, notwithstanding the facts on the ground. The border is not secure. You had 2.2 million people running through the border in the last year, okay? 2.2 million people. All Biden has to do is enforce the immigration laws based on national security. He doesn't have to declare a health crisis under Title 42. He has the power, the statutory power as President of the United States, to suspend the immigration laws and to slow down or to stop the immigration. And he's not doing it. And not only is he not doing it, but from the very beginning, he's done everything possible to open our borders. He has a Secretary of Homeland Security who's deliberately misrepresented the facts to the American people and to the Congress. He said the border is secure. It is not. He said that the border is not open. It is. They appointed a so-called czar to ensure that we had border security. That's the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. She's done absolutely nothing. When asked if she'd been to the border, she said, well, she hadn't been to Europe either. Well, if your job is to be the border czar, don't you think you'd want to be there? And Biden himself, when he went down supposedly to look at the border, they cleaned the place up from the homeless and from the refugees lying in the streets. The violence is going up, the crime is going up, the drug addiction is going up. We're under attack at our borders. And now, Jesse, it's coming in not just from the southern border, it's also coming in through Canada. They have declared that it's open season on the national sovereignty of the United States. Why doesn't he address that? That's the paramount issue of our time in terms of what he can do with respect to domestic policy. What say you?
I agree with you. And at the State of the Union address this week, he brought up the opioid epidemic that's been killing our kids, killing our families, killing everyone. There's not one person that has not been affected by fentanyl and opiates. And how is fentanyl getting here? We have said this, Your Honor, over and over again, over the number of years that over the year we've been together on this show. China creates fentanyl. China gets it through the cartels. The cartels make money getting it over the border, which is completely open. It gets into every neighborhood in our 50 states, and our kids are dying. Our kids are getting killed. So I think it was proper that the Republicans fought back on that. You cannot propose issues like, and lie about the other party's positions, like defunding police, defunding Social Security, defunding Medicaid, and also then say, but we need to protect the families from this opioid crisis. How about we begin, as you said, declaring a national emergency, closing these borders, and using the policies that if you don't like the guy Donald Trump, rename it and use those policies because they did protect our borders. They established our borders. We stopped people coming in unfettered. It stopped terrorists from getting in here. And just as importantly, it stopped the cartels from poisoning our kids at record levels with all these drugs.
And it's not just it's drugs, which are terrible enough, but you also have the human trafficking of
Exactly.
sexual exploitation of young people as they come through. And tell me, if you care about this country, why do you want to make every city, every town, every village a border town? Why do you want to ship them throughout the United States to dislocate stable communities and threaten their public health, their public safety, and their economies? I just don't understand that, Jesse.
And we have these individuals that they cry about humanitarian crises, and we should listen to them. But how do you now then play politics by saying, okay, well, we'll turn a deaf ear to the human trafficking, the sexual trafficking that's going on right now over the border? Let's leave the border open so that we can help the industry, the illegal, illicit industry of human trafficking, sexual trafficking, and where they basically have indentured servants that are sex workers against their will. Why? Where is
the humanity in that?
Left? Where are the Democrats? Where's the humanity in that? They're just hypocrites.
And it's only going to get worse. He's got 2 more years in this term, and he can do enormous harm because his party does control the Senate. And I must say, his party is also my party. I'm still waiting to get my party back, Jesse. I'm waiting for the Democratic Party, which was responsible for issues like national security and understood it and protected it and cared about the integrity of our borders. This is a different Democratic Party, and they need to wake up. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
You're right.
Please.
They have to wake up, Your Honor, because here's the thing: everyone speaks about a small group of conservative Republicans and they call them the extremists and that they're blocking everything. Well, we have an entire party that's been hijacked by the socialist Democrats and progressives, both here in the state of New York and in the chambers of the state Senate and in Albany and in the Assembly, as well as down in D.C. All these policies are as a result of these progressives that have hijacked the Democratic Party that you grew up in.
That's exactly right, Jesse. I have to tell you, Governor Hochul gave a speech. She promised she wasn't going to raise taxes, but all of a sudden she's talking about raising the payroll tax. So 1 week she promises no new taxes, and then she starts talking about raising the rate on the payroll tax. 484,000 people in the last 2 years, Jesse, have left New York State. And who do you think is leaving? And who do you think they're being replaced by? The productive people, the taxpayers, the job creators, the employers, the entrepreneurs, the people who are responsible for making charitable contributions to hospitals and to cultural institutions. They're the people leaving. They're taking away our middle-class tax base, and they're substituting illegal immigrants who shouldn't be here in the first place because they're violating our laws by coming in. And I don't care what anybody says. They are illegal. They have no right to be here. They should get online like everybody else and be processed appropriately through the consuls and through the embassies and not jump our borders. And I like Eric Adams, New York City's mayor, and I tell you, I know him and I like him. And he's got it half right or 3/4 right. It's a federal problem. The federal government has to rise to the occasion. Where I think I differ with Mayor Adams is he needs to call out the Biden administration for failing to deal with the border crisis because it's self-manufactured by the Democratic administration. And that's a problem. It's not enough to say, just send us money, which Adams has done. It's great to get the money, but soon you're going to be running out of money, and the flow of the bodies of all these people coming in is going to increase. And you have to pay for their schools. You have to pay for their medical care. You have to pay for their food. You have to pay for their housing. Who's going to pay for all this, Jesse? I don't understand what they're thinking.
The middle class. They're either going to pay directly on their paybooks, on their paychecks and their pocketbooks, or they're going to pay for it with lack of services at their emergency rooms, in their school classrooms, everywhere else. And you know what, Your Honor, the listeners that are on right now, they expect the Republican chairman from Suffolk County to take this view of the president and his policies. They expect, to some extent, a common sense Democrat like yourself to bring into question the policies of this president and the one-party rule. But let's take a look at this. New York Times, one of the darlings of the progressive left, Siena College, no bastion of conservative think tank there, they commissioned a poll on the 2024 presidential campaigns. And in that poll, it said that, I have it right here. I had it. Now it's gone. But where is it? Number one, 13% of Americans say that the country's going in the right direction. 13% in this poll from the New York Times and Siena College. But this outstanding number, 64% of Democratic voters saying they would prefer a new standard bearer in the 2024 presidential campaign.
Let's pick that up. Let's pick that up in a minute. Kevin's given us the sign. I want to talk to you about 2024 in a moment when we come back. This is the Long Island Report with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse, when we broke, we started to talk about the 2024 presidential race. And I posed the following question to you, Jesse. Are we really and truly stuck with Joe Biden and Donald Trump for the 2024 presidential race? What say you?
I think that the 2024 presidential race has not yet been decided yet or the participants declared. But I will say this. In a previous segment, I referenced a New York Times Siena College poll that said that 64% of the Democratic voters are saying they would prefer a new standard bearer in 2024 presidential campaign. That means they're done with Biden-Harris. At the very least, Donald Trump is at the top, or if not in the top two, of those Republican polls that have been out there. So to be honest with you, as of right now, I think the Republican field is still undecided. But what's even more concerning, if I was the political leader of the Democratic Party, what I'm concerned about is that my standard bearer, the one that we were able to utilize the benefits of COVID and absentee ballot, unchecked ballots in all these states in 2020 to get him over the line, that our electorate, our base wants a new standard bearer. So the problem is more on the Democratic side. The Republican field, I think, is still open. I think we still have to see some names that are coming out. I think that if we hear, we still have the possibility of Pence announcing. We know that Nikki Haley is going to announce. We don't know what DeSantis is going to be doing, but he's making moves to set things forward.
Pompeo
as a possible candidate. Pompeo is doing the same. So I think that the Republican field is not yet formed. We do know we have the big, the big, kahuna. Donald Trump in the middle of this. He's been declared. But I don't think the Republican field is set. The Democrat field should be set. That Democrat field should be set with the sitting president and the sitting vice president being prepared to announce their reelection campaign and move forward.
Well,
but they haven't. So if I'm the Democrat, if I'm in the shoes of my Democratic counterpart at the national level, I know the conundrum I'm in. I know the conundrum I am in with both the left-wing progressive base of our party and the fact that our voters are saying we want somebody else to the tune of almost 3-1.
Well, let me give you a take on both parties. With respect to the Democratic Party, it's not a coincidence, Jesse, that all of a sudden the Democratic National Committee has changed the order of the primaries and the conventions. They've moved Iowa and New Hampshire off the front page, moved them to the rear, and they're bringing in South Carolina and Michigan. That's not a coincidence, Jesse. What that is it's stark political calculations. That's where Biden's strength is. He's got the unions in Michigan, and he's got the black constituency controlled by Clyburn in South Carolina, which got him over the hurdle, back in 2020. So they're trying to cook the books, fix the deck, whatever cliche you want to use, because they know Biden is in trouble within the Democratic Party. That's number one. Number two, you're absolutely right. The numbers show that even the Democrats want a different face at the top of the ticket. And the Democratic insiders and the polls also show that they want to replace the vice president as well. So you don't have a popular choice. If you got rid of Biden, you'd be stuck with Harris. Nobody wants Harris within the party. They're both people who should be off the stage. They're not wanted. They haven't done a good job. Harris is regrettably, and she's one step away from the presidency of the United States, but she's a lightweight. She's done nothing. She's an embarrassment to the American people. She's an embarrassment to this country, and she's an embarrassment to the Democratic Party, and they know it. And they're going to have a hard time getting rid of her because of identity politics. But yes, the Democrats, if they were smart, they'd start looking around for ways to get Biden and Harris off the ticket. Okay. Now, switching to the Republicans. I think Donald Trump was an excellent president. I've said that before. I think some of his policies were absolute the right thing to do for this country and protecting the country's interests. I think, as I've often said, my mother would say that Trump had an unfortunate personality. He alienated people. He made enemies unnecessarily. He didn't broaden his base. He didn't have a big tent to bring more people into the Republican Party and get the independents to support a Republican candidate for president. That hasn't changed. I haven't seen him do anything, frankly, that changes the fact that a large percentage of the people don't like Trump. They held their nose and they voted for Biden because they didn't like Trump, and they also thought they were voting against the socialists like Sanders or the crazy left like Elizabeth Warren. That's what happened in 2020. Trump is a divisive figure. If the election was between Biden and Trump, it's anybody's guess who would win because they're both unpopular. And the large view is they want both of those people off the stage. This is the problem about the Republicans. In 2016, Trump won when they had 16 people standing up there on the stage, and you had a whole anti-Trump coalition, but Trump had a base, and he was able to win because he had a base. And that's a real problem for the Republicans. Because if it happens again with another 16 people standing up on the stage, Trump is going to be the Republican standard bearer. He's going to have more of a problem, by the way, getting somebody to run as his vice president. I submit to you there are a lot of people who are well qualified to be vice president of the United States who will not share the ticket with him because they think he's damaged goods and it will hurt their reputation. What say you?
I think that I agree with you. I mean, the issue is, you're right, it may have been something dealt with personality. As you said, perhaps people held their nose in 2020 to vote for Joe Biden. But let's go back to what you first said. How interesting it is and how symptomatic and fundamental and part of the fabric of their party existence and their philosophy and principles that if the Democratic Party is faced with a challenge or is rebuked, they don't adapt and change to adopt a greater base, a bigger base. They opt to change the rules of the game. They wanted to pack after Roe versus Wade's decision by the Supreme Court. They wanted to pack the court and change the dynamics. They want to add 2 states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, because in their minds, they're going to get 4 extra state senators.
United States senators, sure. So they'll have a permanent majority. United States Senate.
Have a permanent majority. And now they even bring it down to the basics of their party structure. The first 2 primaries, historically, traditionally, and this country is based on principles and traditions, has always been Iowa and New Hampshire. But because those primaries don't work for the Democrat incumbent or the Democratic Party, they're changing the deck. Now, listen, Republicans, we will fight to get over the finish line. You let us know what the rules of engagement are, and we will fight them. But the Democrats, They changed the game in midstream. And I do say to you, I submit every president needs to be prepared for a crisis, whether it be a war, whether it be an economic crisis, or whether it be a pandemic. In 2020, there were states, including the state of New York under Andrew Cuomo, that routinely changed the electoral process within their state to benefit their party and their party's candidates from president right down the ballot. No doubt about it, they did that. They weaponized, at least in the state of New York and in Georgia and in Arizona and other Pennsylvania. And
Pennsylvania?
Other states, they weaponized.
Absolutely. Pennsylvania.
They weaponized a pandemic for their electoral processes. Dropbox absentee ballots, that's what led to Biden's success. And you're a judge. You know, one of the first things that we follow is the chain of custody of evidence. That's what absentee ballots are supposed to have. You're supposed to have an envelope. You're supposed to have the signature verified. That signature's got to be verified. Then it's opened and such. Democrats, they want to wipe out drop boxes, and the way we've changed the absentee ballot rules now in the state of New York, they are to eliminate the chain of evidence, a chain of custody, which proves fair elections. So I submit to you that the weaponization of the electoral process in various states, Republican and Democrat, and I can speak to that because of the state of New York, which we all live in, and what we endured here. That also led to Biden's victory, and they're trying to do that again. They're doing that again within their own party.
I agree with you, Jesse. So let's switch gears. I want to talk to you about that not so beautiful Chinese spy balloon that came over. Let me give you my take, and then I'll ask you your comments. First of all, they can't get their story straight. When did Biden know it, or did he not know it? What did the military tell him? What did they not tell him? Why did they wait so much time to take it down? Why would you ever let it go over U.S. territory when it could have been knocked down earlier? When they knocked it down, what did they knock down? Just the balloon part, or did they take the intelligence part that was destroyed? We had General Jack Keane on Cats at Night last night, and he said he thought they took down the balloon type part of this balloon, but they didn't take out the intelligence, and that was destroyed when it hit the water. I may defer to General Keane on that, but there were other reports that they hit it dead center when they took it down, and those reports say they smashed up the intelligence equipment, making it harder to go back and find out what they were reporting and how it was reported. And that's very troubling to me. Excuse me. The whole process is very troubling. Now I'm going to share something else with you, Jesse, then I'm going to turn this over to you. This is an old story. This happened.
It is an old story.
It's an old story. And the Washington Post has reported, the National Review has quoted them. Guess what's been going on since at least 2018? The Chinese have been using these balloons to get intelligence from the Philippines, from Taiwan, from Japan, from Vietnam, and from India. They've been using these balloons to weaponize intelligence, and these very same balloons can be used to have weapons of mass destruction. So when they tell you it was no big deal, well, it went over 5 or 6 different military encampments, including those without nuclear weapons in Montana. But when they tell you it wasn't a threat, I asked one of the people on the Cats Night Show, a leading military expert, I said, how can they be so sure as it's flying over that it wasn't a threat? What kind of surveillance do they do? How do they read what's really inside? What do they know? That if it's a little canister, what it is, and then it's dropped. I mean, these are troubling questions. You don't want these balloons flying over national sovereign states, and that's what the Chinese are doing. China has a long-term vision of world conquest and domination, and this is just one of their components. What say you?
I completely agree with you. Yeah, it's very basic and simple. Number one, why didn't we just shoot down this balloon or thwart it in any way possible when it was identified off the Alaskan coast and when it came in within the 12 miles of territorial waters? I don't understand why we didn't do it then. why did we wait for it to traverse the continent of the United States, be stationed over nuclear missile station bases, and then progress towards the Atlantic? If we could have shot this down in the Atlantic, we should have shot this down before in the Alaskan airspace, so before it did any damage. Here's the other issues. I don't know. I'm not a techie. Maybe I've watched too many Tom Clancy movies and read too many of his books. But I would imagine that whatever has been collected in terms of intelligence from that balloon has already been transmitted to a satellite and into the hands of the CCP. So what we shot, I don't even know what technology we would have of any benefit to us. But let's give it some credence that they did it. I'm glad that they finally shot it down. I hope they did it properly. I'm not sure. That's number one. Number two is, why can't they get the story straight? The president was taking shot after shot after shot. He was losing political capital which he doesn't have a lot of, over his actions or inactions of this balloon. So he finally shoots it down. They don't tell. Now the story is, we didn't tell the president. Well, why didn't you tell the president? I thought that that this is part of the first briefing you get in the morning for a president, the presidential intelligence briefing that you get. Why wasn't it in there?
I said to Alan Dershowitz the other night, the Constitution of the United States is very, very clear. The military reports to the president. Civilian control over the military. It's not for the military types to decide that they're not going to share this kind of information with the president of the United States.
Unless they want to shield the president, which I think they are now in the process of doing, or whatnot. So I don't understand what that issue is. The other thing is, all of a sudden, it comes out that there are these balloons that after President Trump said, well, they didn't fly over the United States during my tenure. Fair enough. A couple of days later, now they said, well, they were in existence. We don't know if they flew up. It's amazing. It's almost like they're using the military and military intelligence as political cover. As you pointed out, we just found out that these balloons have been flying over the states. The countries of Taiwan, Vietnam, Japan, and even elsewhere. So, which one is it? Could we not use the military to please cover up our incompetence at the administrative level?
Well, that's very interesting because it raises a larger question, Jesse, which is,
who's in charge?
Who's in charge, and who do you trust? The military has always been trusted. You understand Congress is not trusted. You understand the media is not trusted. But the military has always been trusted. Now you cannot trust the military. You can't get an honest answer. What do they know? When do they know it? What do they do about it? Why do they say it wasn't more than an intelligence threat, but a threat of weaponization that could do real harm to the people? It's frightening that you have to be asking these questions. And Trump and Bolton and Pompeo and Espers, who's the Secretary of Defense, they've all said they did not know about it. Now, are all of those guys lying? Or did the military hide that from them? So we need to know, and I hope the House Republicans will have hearings on this. We need to know, what do they know, when do they know it, and what do they do about it, if anything. All right, Kevin's given us the sign.
Okay.
We'll take a break. Hold the thought. We'll come right back, and we'll pick up where you want to begin. It's the Long Island Report with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. We'll be right back.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos Remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See RemixYogurt.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
Welcome back to the Long Island Report with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, Jesse, when we took the break, you were about to share with us an interesting poll. Could you share that with us?
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. We were speaking that there's lack of trust in government. There's lack of trust in politicians. We expect that. But there's also now, as we discussed, the different stories that were coming out of this Chinese intelligence balloon, that the trust in the military is even waning. Well, back in December of last year, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute commissioned a poll, and they found that 48% of Americans say they have a great deal of trust in the military, which is slightly up from 45% of last year. Still, it's under 50%. More than half the nation does not trust the military. The confidence in the U.S. military has plummeted in recent years, and from a high recently of 2018, where 70% of Americans said that they have a great deal of trust in an institution. So I bring this up as why. I am not saying that this is not about the men and women of uniform that put their lives on the line each and every day to keep the lamp of freedom and liberty lit here in America and to keep us safe. This is a demonstration of leadership. When you had a tough, single-minded, principled president in the Oval Office who responded and provided the military with the tools it needed and listened to his generals and listened to do what was right to protect our borders and take effective action in foreign lands where other countries did not really dare to mess with the United States at that point. The people had confidence in the military. When you have weak leadership in the Oval Office, with a president that's worried more about checking off boxes than he is about providing the necessary tools and the principles to its leaders, and you now use the military in this case in double speak so that it insulates and protects the president. That brings confidence down. It drops the confidence in the military because of the politicizing the military. And the other issue is this wokeism that we'll probably get into later, because we always get into it. The wokeism that is now permeating through every institution, including the military. Well, that's why Americans don't have trust in the military, or it's fallen, have trust in the military. Not because of the soldiers. Not because of the soldiers there on the ground. It's because of the leadership that's leading, the civilian leadership that's leading that military.
Well, that's very interesting. So let's pick up on this wokeism, because one of the topics I want to discuss with you, and it works perfectly well here, Jesse, is what I call the cancer of left-wing wokeism and why it must be stopped. Wokeism has permeated all aspects of our life. For example, the military's job is to protect and defend this country and its citizens and to be able to fight a war. It's not supposed to be about which pronoun you're using, about critical race theory, or any kind of left-wing nonsense. It's supposed to be about protecting and defending his country and the ability to fight the war and deter our enemies. And every institution is saturated now with a worldview, institution after institution after institution. And it's the same kinds of people. It's academia, it's the media, it's now the law schools, it's now the medical schools. Everything has to be about diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory. This has nothing to do with the mission. If you want to have an educated student body, don't indoctrinate them with your wokeism, your diversity, equity, and inclusion, your critical race theory. Teach them how to think for themselves and to be honest intellectually and morally. Stop indoctrinating them. This is not a Stalinist country. This is not a Maoist country. Stop the indoctrination. It's all over, Jesse, and it's very, very dangerous. Do you really want to, when you go in for heart surgery, do you really want to have somebody got into medical school because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or do you want the best talented man or woman, whether they're black or white or Asian, Hispanic, whether they're gay or straight or whatever? Do you care about that, or do you care that the doctor, the surgeon who's about to operate on you, knows what he or she is doing? Do you really care what pronouns they use?
Blank. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I will tell you point blank. I, like you, and like every American, every New Yorker, every Long Islander, We want the when it's a need that we have, whether it's our health, our safety, our protection, or the ability to get a job or hire somebody. You want to get the best person for that. That's what we need to do. We don't need to do this wokeism and go forward. Here's the other thing: at the foundation of wokeism is not equality and diversity. It's being offended. This is how it started because somebody was offended. So I don't understand that. What happened to the America, the New York, the Long Island, the Suffolk County, where we could disagree on things and not be offended and then rip away entire words or phrases or books from the entire lexicon in the library of our communities, of our daily lives. It's unbelievable.
Well, because they control language. They control language. They control thought. They control thought. They control decision making.
Absolutely, right there. You this is why you're better than everybody else.
Tell my wife,
brought
please.
It down to you brought it down to the simple answers: words, thoughts, control, and direction. That's what they want. You control the words, you control the thought process, and then you control the direction. And we've seen Americans, New Yorkers, Long Islanders, and Suffolk County residents rise up against this type of activity. But we have politicians, and I will tell you, I think wokeism lies really in two places: progressive Democrats and socialists, and big tech and the elite corporations. That's where it lasts. That's where they exist, and that's who promulgates this type of activity for A, their own political gain, or B, their own profit margin.
Well, that's interesting because, as we've discussed before, the Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States promulgated a rule saying that if an investment manager invested in the Green New Deal stocks and it turned out to be a bad investment, but they were doing it because of the agenda of the Green New Deal ideology, that was okay, that the fiduciary duty of the managers of the money funds was besides the point, that the obligation to protect the shareholders or the pensioners was beside the point. They would give cover to these people who would invest in these ridiculous deals of solar energy, which fell apart. You remember Biden walking through the factory saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they went bankrupt. And all those investments fail, and when that money is lost, who pays the price? The investors, the people, the pensioners. This is serious stuff, and the SEC was going to give them cover. Now, thankfully, you have about 21 states through their state attorneys general and the chief financial officers who are going, and the state legislatures are going back and attacking this and saying we will not invest and allow our state monies to be invested in any company, whether it's BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, Fidelity, it doesn't matter who they are, that are going to take this cover and use it to not protect the fiduciary responsibilities of the best possible return at the least risk without carrying out a political, ideological agenda. So it does permeate all aspects of our life, Jesse. This cancer of left-wing wokeism. You can't get a doctor who you know is talented because you have to have it. And let's be honest about this. All this is about a retooling of the worst kind of results-oriented decision-making. You want to have a certain percentage of population holding certain percentage of the jobs. That's what you want. It's a result-oriented situation. It's a denial of equal protection, of equal opportunity. That's what you're talking about. It's affirmative action taken to the nines. And this is very, very serious. This is about quotas. That's what it's about. It's a different way of getting quotas. They can't get certain laws through, so they force the corporations to make investments in this, and this will then lead to a divestment of our ability to have independent energy. It all works together, Jesse. It's frightening.
I completely agree with you. And that's why, we go through this whole process. And that's where we started with this in this segment, is the wokeism that leads to this. So, I mean, I think that's, it's in every institution. They want to place it in every institution, whether it be our military, our schools, academia. And as you pointed out, now you have to invest based on our political philosophy instead of the good old, capitalistic capitalism and capitalistic intuition that this country was founded on.
And let the market decide whether you want electric cars or you want to have gas or electric stoves. Don't impose it by the central planning from these ideological elites. And this is the last thing I want to say in this segment before we take our break. This is a terrible thing because what you have is you have the control people in all these different institutions who have the same mindset. And so when somebody who has a different mindset tries to come in and be a player in those institutions, they include them out, as Samuel Goldwyn used to say. They will not let them in. So that's why over 80% of the professors in the country veer left and are not centrist or conservative. There's a prejudice and a bias against any countervailing view that they won't accept. It's why you can't say that maybe there are negative impacts of these vaccines because it was politically correct only that the vaccines were the greatest things in the world and there were no harmful effects and they were very safe and they'll help spread contagion. Well, guess what? There are harmful effects, it's been demonstrated, and it didn't spread contagion. And just because you took the vaccine didn't mean you weren't going to get COVID anyway. So they had that. That's all part of the same wokeism. It's all part of the same political correctness. It's all part of the same ideology.
It absolutely is.
So let's take this break, and we'll be back in a moment with more interesting conversation. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Jesse Garcia, the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the Chair of the Republican Party out in Suffolk County. Stay tuned.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We're back for our fourth segment of today's show. Jesse, there was a tragic death the other day of one of the law enforcement people in New York. Could you talk about that?
Absolutely, sure. Just late a week ago this weekend, a New York City police officer off duty, at a car dealership buying a car. New York police officer Adid Fayez of Deer Park in Suffolk County was shot and fought for his life. Late this past week, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. First and foremost, I know that you and I have spoken about this off air, and our hearts and prayers go out to Adid Fayez, his family, his young family that he left behind in this tragic and senseless murder of this New York police officer. I also, my heart goes out to each and every one of the men and women of our law enforcement who every night they leave their homes and they're not sure if they come back. And sometimes they're not sure if they come back when they're even off duty. And, including our first responders and our frontline workers. But as we discussed, this is, symptomatic of a situation where there is a level of disrespect permeated by elected officials on the Democratic side, progressive socialists, who have been demeaning police officers and men and women of uniform for the better part of 3 years. Defund the police. Let's take away their protections, their insurance protections. Let's release their address and their personal information by FOIL, by removing the 58 provisions of civil service, as the Democrats did here in the state of New York. this puts all these men and women of the New York Police Department and every police department and all law enforcement in harm's way. And it's an effort that needs to stop. This defund the police movement that encompasses all these actions that put the lives of our cops in any jurisdiction in danger needs to come to an end. There needs to come a common sense approach by even Democrats that this is not working, whether it's cashless bail or removing 50A from the civil service books, or reducing monies in our police department so they don't have proper equipment, they don't have proper training, which at times then leads to other tragedies. Again, my heart goes out, and all of those here in Suffolk County, and I know New York, goes out to that police officer who lost his life tragically and senselessly. But it begs the question and the discussion about where does it end? Where does it end with this type of demeaning efforts of our law enforcement people?
Well, that's an excellent question. So let me tell you where, in my opinion, it ends. It ends in anarchy. It ends in lack of civilization. It ends in the Hobbesian nightmare of a struggle of each against each, and life being petty, short, and dangerous. I'd say to you that without effective law enforcement, you have no civilization. Without civilization, life is total anarchy, and it's barely worth living. You do not want to have that world, and we're headed that way. And I think the way to characterize this, and I think of it this way, is we're talking about the death of effective law enforcement in this country. And the questions become who's responsible, why it matters, and what must be done. Well, you've answered the question quite well. What must be done? Reinstill respect for law enforcement. Support local and state and federal law enforcement. Who is responsible? The crazy left. Why do they do this? They do this because they have an agenda. It's an ideological agenda, and they don't care about the consequences. The vast majority of the victims of violent crime are minorities, black and brown. That's who the victims are. And the vast majority of the perpetrators of these crimes are also black and brown. It's not racism to say that. That's what the statistics tell us. And the fact of the matter is, if you care about black lives and Black Lives Matter, then you should care about what's going on. The number of violent crimes across this country have escalated. Cities that were civilized cities that were really in the frontier of wonderful cultural living and outdoor living, Portland in Oregon and Seattle and Washington State, they're wastelands now. People are fleeing. People are fleeing California. People are fleeing New York. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people flee, but the fundamental point that I believe it happens, yes, it's tax and it's overregulation and it was COVID, but it's when you're not safe. When you're not safe walking down the streets, we're not safe getting on a bus, we're not safe going into a store, we're not safe being on the subways, sitting in a restaurant, an outdoor cafe. When you're not safe and you don't feel safe, everything goes to hell. Now, how did it happen? You have a fellow named George Soros who woke up one day and realized he could undermine effective law enforcement by funding campaigns for so-called woke prosecutors who would not enforce the laws. Easier to take out one law and order prosecutor who was protecting the public in a campaign than winning a whole state legislature or a whole city council and a mayoralty. And that's what they did. They went after the prosecutors. Then they elected a whole bunch of state legislatures. And here in New York, it's one bad law after another. It's no ability to hold someone in based on their dangerousness. It's a mandate that even when you can hold somebody in, it's a so-called bail-eligible crime, you have to use the least drastic means to ensure that they'll come back, which means that judges are forced, even when they could set bail, they have to set minimal bail or no bail at all on this least alternative means. It means discovery laws where you have to turn over open files discoveries in 10 or 15 days, so cases are being dismissed for failure to prosecute voluntarily or by the courts because you don't have time to process all the paperwork that needs to to be done. It's the raise the age law, Jesse, where kids with guns, 15, 16, 17, and knives are attacking people on the streets, baseball bats, and you can't hold them in the criminal courts and the Supreme Court because they're so-called kids and not a threat, theoretically, but yet they're doing the violence, and you have to put them to family court, which serves them a hot chocolate and cookies. That's what's going on. And then you have a legislature that says, oh, well, we want to see the data. The data is there, Jesse. All they have to do is see it. And you have a governor in Hochul who talks the talk but hasn't done the walk. She hasn't pushed hard. She just gave them a raise, the state legislators a raise. And what did she get in return? She got in return nothing changes on the laws that would protect us and the laws that undermine us. She didn't get that. She allowed her candidate, who would have been a fair judge, Judge LaSalle, to be sabotaged by Generis in the state Senate because he wasn't crazy left enough for their agenda. And they don't know how we would have voted on their issues, but they didn't care because they wanted to pack the court with a left-wing ideologue, and they said they would not have Judge LaSalle because he was on their hit list because he wasn't crazy left enough. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you said it right there. You put it all out there based on where we are in all this. And let's put this at the feet of the governor. And you're absolutely right. If she seriously wanted to protect her citizens here in New York by changing bail laws and giving extra tools and funding and protections that they enjoyed before this radical left took over in one-party rule Albany in 2019, she could have done that. She could have done that. It's plain old politics. You want this? I'll give you that. It's what do you call it? It's called compromise. It's called coming together. It's bipartisanship amongst even the Democratic Party. But she didn't do that. She just gave the legislature what they wanted, and now is fighting on multiple fronts with no leverage.
Well, let me tell you one last thing. Kevin gave me the sign, but I just want to tell you this. My source is in Albany, and this was confirmed in a conversation I had last night with Melissa DeRusso, who was the secretary, that is the chief of staff to the former governor, Andrew Cuomo. Her sources and my sources say the same thing, which is that the people around Hochul, her political operatives, her governmental operatives, asked LaSalle to withdraw his name from nomination, and he's refused to do it. So she's really in a quandary. She looks weak within her own party. They're going to hurt her for the next 4 years as governor because they have her on the ropes. So you're not going to have a countervailing force from a governor. And if they're successful in sabotaging LaSalle's nomination for chief judge, you're not going to have a countervailing force to make sure that the laws that are passed by a crazy left-wing legislature are not unconstitutional. With that, Jesse, I have to sign off. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse, another great pleasure being with you. I thank you very much.
My pleasure to be with you, sir.
And this is the Long Island Report. We look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thank you very much for listening.